Today, the judge made an unusual decision, and of course, we know a lot has happened in the days since Monday, and that was referred to by the judge as he made that decision.
Why is Keir Starmer's government trying to silence us about the Southport killer? As the trial of Axel Rudek Cabana approaches, a shocking gag order threatens to keep us in the dark. The public's right to know is under attack. With 3 young girls dead and 10 others fighting for their lives, the government's move reeks of a cover-up. What are they hiding, and why don't they want us talking about it? The Southport tragedy has left the nation reeling, but just as the public outcry reached its peak, something unprecedented happened. The government, in a move that's raised more than a few eyebrows, decided to slap a gag order on the case. It's as if they're telling us, nothing to see here, folks, move along. But we all know there's plenty to see and even more to discuss. This isn't just any old warning. We're talking about a full-blown directive from the Attorney General's office, complete with reminders about contempt of court laws. But here's the kicker. The language they've used isn't just a gentle reminder. It's got all the subtlety of a sledgehammer, leaving many to wonder if this is more about intimidation than protecting the integrity of the trial. Let's be clear, the crimes we're dealing with here are horrific, the kind that shakes a community to its core and leaves a nation searching for answers. So why in the face of such a tragedy is the government so keen to keep us quiet? It's a question that's got people talking, or at least trying to talk before they're shushed. The timing of this gag order is suspicious to say the least. We've had high-profile cases before, but none have seen the government react quite like this. It's as if they're trying to throw a blanket over a bonfire. Sure, it might smother the flames for a bit, but the heat's still there, and it's only going to get more intense.
That unrest seems to have spread like wildfire.
What's particularly troubling is how the Attorney General's memo blurs the lines of what actually constitutes contempt. It's so vague that it could potentially silence legitimate debate and inquiry. Want to discuss the case with your mates down at the pub? Better think twice. Fancy writing a social media post about it? You might want to reconsider. It's got people walking on eggshells, afraid that even mentioning the case might land them in hot water. But here's the real question. What could be so sensitive about this case that it requires such drastic measures? We're not talking about national security here. This is about a crime that's affected real people in a real community. Don't they have the right to speak about what's happened to them? The government's actions have effectively turned a national tragedy into a taboo subject. It's as if they're trying to control the narrative by simply erasing it. But in doing so, they've only fueled more speculation and outrage. People are left wondering, what are they trying to hide?
The prosecutor, Deanna Here, said the court needed to balance the defendant's welfare against the public's interest in the case. The prosecutor said naming him would reduce the risk of misidentification of others who might be subject to violence, as seen in the recent disorder. The police, she said, doubted that would ease public tension, and the youth justice team wanted to keep his anonymity for his own welfare.
As the dust settles on the government's gag order, a curious silence has descended over one of British politics' most vocal figures. Remember Keir Starmer, the man who swept into office on a tidal wave of promises about transparency and accountability? Well, it seems he's suddenly developed a severe case of political laryngitis. The Labour leader's conspicuous absence from discussions about this unprecedented silencing tactic has left many scratching their heads. Starmer, once lauded as a champion of justice and integrity, now finds himself in an awkward position. His refusal to address the gag order issue is raising eyebrows and fueling suspicions. It's a far cry from the man who promised to usher in a new era of openness in government. So what's behind this sudden change of heart? The plot thickens when we look at Starmer's relationship with Attorney General Richard Hermer. Hermer's appointment to this crucial role wasn't exactly a shining example of meritocracy. Instead, it seems to have been more a case of, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. Hermer, it turns out, donated a cool $5,000 to Starmer's leadership campaign. Talk about a return on investment. But Hermer's controversial past raises even more questions about Starmer's judgment. The Attorney General has a history of defending figures associated with the IRA and even worked to secure compensation for IRA leader Jerry Adams. Not exactly the kind of background you'd expect for the government's top legal advisor, is it? It's enough to make you wonder about Hermer's impartiality in issuing this gag order. Starmer's refusal to address these concerns only deepens the mystery. Why won't he comment on the qualifications and impartiality of his hand-picked Attorney General? His silence is deafening, and it's not going unnoticed. Journalists and the public alike are growing increasingly frustrated with this lack of transparency. The irony is palpable. The man who promised to throw open the curtains and let the light shine in is now pulling them firmly shut. It's as if Starmer has forgotten his own campaign promises, trading in his transparency pledge for a cloak of secrecy. This sudden about-face is leaving a bitter taste in the mouths of many who supported him.
That this government handles matters very badly.
Yes.
And the idea of controlling what we know is just not acceptable. That, you know, this is not a Stasi state. Right. We're not a dictatorship. We are supposed to be a mature democracy in which people are treated like adults. And actually, Mike, my theory is that if you treat people more like adults, if you give them more responsibility, they will grow up and they will behave better. And part of the issues we have is that we're being treated like children, so people behave like children. It's just inevitable. People behave like children. It's just inevitable.
Yes. Cause and effect. Which brings us to Mr. Mike Amesbury, the man who quite likes to interact with his constituents in a rather unusual way, deciding to batter them rather than actually talk to them. But my question for you on him is, how is it possible that he's still won in the Labour Party? He's only been suspended. People have said to me, oh, well...
People who are elected to these positions, they hold party positions. They look inherently biased towards their own party. And no surprise that this all appears to be going on in the Labour area.
Yeah.
And this is part of politicising the police.
As the trial approaches, the public is left with more questions than answers. What could possibly explain Starmer's reluctance to address these issues? Is there more to this gag order than meets the eye? The Labour leader's silence is not just puzzling, it's downright suspicious. The Southport case has become a litmus test for our democracy, challenging the very foundations of free speech and public discourse. While the government's gag order looms large, citizens aren't entirely powerless. We can still engage in meaningful discussions about the broader implications of this case.
It does resonate. You know, you sometimes see it on the news and you think, oh, it's London, you know. Yes, it doesn't happen often, but it's more likely to when it's your own town. It really does hit home.
Myself and my daughters were at the Manchester Arena bombing, the Ariana Grande concert, and I feel like this community has come together in the same way as the Manchester community did as well. And I think while humanity can be really evil at times, it can also be really beautiful.
Focusing on the principles of justice and accountability that underpin our society. It's not just about one tragic event, it's about preserving the public's right to know and holding those in power accountable. But here's the million-pound question. Will we allow ourselves to be silenced, or will we find creative ways to demand answers? The choice is ours, and it's not an easy one. Staying informed and vocal doesn't mean violating the gag order. It means asking tough questions, scrutinizing the motives behind the government's actions, and refusing to let this case fade into obscurity. After all, isn't that what a truly engaged citizenry should do?